Good morning, friends and enemies. In today's video, we're going through every single fantasy relevant wide receiver, and we will be ranking them as a start, a flex, or a sit. As always, we'll be going game by game, starting with Thursday Night Football, Baltimore at Miami. We did the running back version of this video yesterday. We will link that down below if you want to check it out. And we do those every Wednesday, every Thursday. So subscribe to the channel if you want to tune into those going forward. Baltimore at Miami, we've got the Ravens as 7.5-point favorites, 51.5-point total here. All signs are pointing towards Lamar Jackson returning from his injury in this one, which is big news. Obviously, I think Zay Flowers just returns to normal Zay Flowers. So the way you thought about him in the beginning of the year is the way you should start thinking about him. Again, 69.5 receiving yards for him. He is my wide receiver 12 in my rankings at the moment. So there's not going to be a lot of guys that you're starting over him. So I'm going to throw him into the must-start category. I'm going to do the same with Jalen Waddle, who for the most part with Tyreek Hill out is a fantastic option in the fantasy world. There will be some games where Tua absolutely flames out, but like we saw in that Cleveland game, again, it's usually weather related. Like the environment really gets to Tua, and I think playing in Miami in this one, he'll be fine. So as much of a not great real life quarterback as he's looked for most of the year, he's still good enough to get Jalen Waddle super involved in this one. It's a great matchup versus the Baltimore secondary, who is just allowing everything their way. Another note on the weather for this week. This is actually a week where we don't have like really almost any concerns right now. It is Thursday, so obviously things can change. And I'm filming this at 10 a.m. on Thursday. So anything that happens after the fact, you cannot hold me accountable for. I will never take accountability for anything ever. All right. So don't yell at me if weather gets crazy over the week. But for right now, we are projecting a very clear week of weather from all the NFL games across the slate, which is great news. Outside of these pass catchers, I mean, there are not a lot of guys that we want to get into our lineups. Like I think there's some floor plays from Malik Washington. There's maybe a spike game of Rashad Bateman, who catches a deep ball. But for the most part, I mean, Bateman's going to go into rather not. So is Malik. I think you can make the argument he could be in the shaky flex category. D-Hop is also not running a ton of snaps. Neither is NWI. So I'm going to throw them into the rather not because I simply would rather not have those guys in my starting lineup. Atlanta at New England. Atlanta 5.5-point underdogs in New England, 44.5-point total. This one's a little shaky here in terms of the outlooks for all of these players. We got Drake London, who missed last week with a hip injury. Now, if we look at the practice reports, most of the team got back to a limited practice for this one. Kyle Pitts, limited, as he is his whole career. Darnell Mooney, limited. Drake London, limited. Michael Penix, he was also limited. So it does look like it's trending towards the Falcons getting back to full strength. We'll have to keep an eye on practice reports, but let's assume that all these guys are back and playing. You're just not sitting Drake London. I will say, just for the conversation's sake, Christian Gonzalez, very tough matchup. Carlton Davis has been playing really well for the Patriots, and we just know that their defense is very, very good at this point of the year. And we get so many up and down performances from Michael Penix and that passing offense. Also, when Darnell Mooney is playing, the splits with Drake London are much worse than when Darnell Mooney is out. So London's going to be a guy you have to throw into your lineup, though. Like, I'm not playing him in DFS lineups if I can help it. Which brings us to Darnell Mooney. I think last week will put a very, very sour taste in a lot of people's mouths, but I definitely still think he is a flex-worthy player above the rest of these guys. Mooney is a good receiver, and I think more often than not, he's going to give you usable games when he is healthy and fully in the lineup. And I get, not wanting to play him after the dud he put up last week, but I still think if we could take a step back, look at things objectively, I still like Mooney as a shaky flex. On the flip side, we've got the Falcons, who do get most of their players back. Billy Bowman was limited. Jesse Bates is limited. Jalen Walker limited. So we will have a lot of reinforcements on the defensive side of the ball to a defense that's performing very well this year against the pass. As you could see, bottom 5 in fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers, bottom 7, maybe 8, depending on how math works, in EPA per pass allowed to opponents. So Stephon Diggs, Butte, they're all kind of like getting home in their own way on a week-to-week basis. But at the end of the day, Pop Douglas over here with a 15.5 receiving yardage line is going to go into rather not. Kayshon Boutte, I think I'm going to throw him into the shaky flex category. Would anybody be surprised if he got home with a big play? No, but I'd rather not throw him into my flex if I could help it. Stephon Diggs, I think he's performed well. I still find it weird that he's playing a significantly lower number of snaps at this point in the season than we would have liked to have seen. There was like a point where he finally week 3, week 4 kind of got above that 65-70% snap count, but he's back down to like sub 60. He's running 55 to 60% of the routes there, which is overall a little bit problematic for a dude like Diggs. Like, we need him to get volume, right? And we need him to put together some of those ceiling games in this matchup against the Falcons pass D that's been really, really good. I'm flirting between putting him at the dub flex and the shaky flex category. I still think he belongs in your lineup, given the fact that Drake May is playing just absolutely lights out. But you could just feel the hesitation from me a little bit based on the matchup. But Diggs is going to go into the dub flex category. Carolina at Green Bay. We've got a 13.5 points game here, 44.5 total. Bryce Young will very likely be making his return from his 1 week absence of his ankle sprain, which honestly doesn't make me feel great about Ted McMillan. Like, I'd rather have Andy Dalton just for his fantasy purposes. And as you can see, the Packers have actually let up a decent amount of points to opposing fantasy wide receivers. They're really, really stiff against the run, but they have not been shut down on both sides of the defense. Top 12 in terms of 12th most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position, top half in terms of EPA per pass allowed. Overall, you're throwing Tet into your lineup. I think he feels relatively good. His target share is insane. He is just the entirety of that passing offense for the Panthers. So in a game where they're projected to lose by 14 points, Tet should probably see 8 to 10 targets in this one. And I think he just needs to be in your lineup because of that. And there's no one else on the Panthers side of the ball that I want in my lineup for this one. The other side of things is kind of tricky, man, because we had Christian Watson finally return for his first game back since the ACL tear, ran a significant number of routes, went 4 for 4 and 85 yards, seeing a lot of shots downfield. Vegas has their lines at 36.5 receiving yards for Christian Watson, 2.5 receptions, 32.5 for Matthew Golden, 2.5 receptions. Romeo Doubs continues to be the number one option for wide receivers. Obviously, Tucker Kraft is the top option in the passing game, but the fantasy points for the Carolina Panthers, man, dead last in terms of fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Doesn't mean they're overly dominant, because as you could see, EPA per pass allowed to opponents is still 13th highest in the league, but it's teams running the ball. It's teams having an effective run game against them. For the most part, they shut down, a few running backs over the last couple of weeks. But a lot of the times the teams go into a game plan with, let's run all over the Carolina Panthers, which leads to less passing opportunities. And in a 14-point spread type of game, you could see them going a heavy dosage of Josh Jacobs as he gets healthier. Emmanuel Wilson factored in a lot. So I could see them going very, very run heavy. So for me, both Christian Watson and Matthew Golden are shaky flex. And honestly, I think I'm actually going to throw Matthew Golden down into the rather not category. It's going to be very, very hard to trust him unless you are very, very desperate this week. Romeo Doubs, I wouldn't say he's a dub flex. He's got a pretty high floor. I think for the most part in PPR, he's going to throw you up anywhere from 9 to 13 points, which is solid. But he really hasn't shown a lot of upside outside of that 1-3 touchdown game. So I'm going to throw him into the shaky flex category. Definitely enough respect out of me that I'm going to throw him into the top of the shaky flex category. 4.5 receptions, 46.5 yardage total, plus 130 for any time touchdown is pretty significant. That's, you'll get those types of numbers when you're attached to an offense like the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love is playing really well. The Packers just score a lot of points in any given week. And it is, at the end of the day, a good matchup, right? They're supposed to win by 14 points. And just because the game script might not be in favor of passing in the second half, it's they do have to get there in some capacity, right? And that might be through a lot of passing in the first half. So Dobbs, shaky flex, can definitely do worse. Right now in my rankings, I do have him as the wide receiver 38. All right. So it is 2 spots ahead of Darnell Mooney. It's a couple spots ahead of Darius Slayton and Christian Watson and those types of players. So those are live right now. Beautifully crispy on there on BDGE.co. If you want to get our rankings, that is where you get it. BDGE.co. Become a Big Dog member. It's the only place to get them. They're live every single week, of course. Our waiver wire rankings with fab suggestions, all that good stuff. If you become a Big Dog member, that'll be linked down below. The cheapest way to get it, you can get the membership for free for the next 3 months, is by downloading our partner app, MGM, or going to their website. When you deposit for the first time, just $10 or more, and you use our code BDGE, play any slip on there, they're going to hit you with a promo code in your inbox on their app that you're allowed to use on our site for 3 months free of the Big Dog membership. All right. Best way to support the brand, best way to support your fantasy teams. BDGE.co, Big Dog membership, best way to get it. MGM, 3 months free. Hank. And just to clear this garbage up here, Coker and Leggett are going to go into the rather not tier, and then we will move on to Chicago at Cincinnati. Now, the storyline of this game, of course, is whether or not Joe Flacco is going to play. Dealing with an AC sprain, they're very much up in the air about it. And what I've found is trying to project injuries this early in the week almost always backfires. The one caveat I will say is this, right? He left the game last week, went inside the locker room, got an injection, and was able to play through it. A lot of times those injections will not last for a full game, right? You kind of like get it for a half or whatnot. So there's a reason why it was fine for the second half of the game. Now, he's probably not going to practice much this week, but that does not mean he can't play. He's obviously a veteran. He can kind of go out there. I mean, he did it the first game he was there in Cincinnati. He got traded and immediately played that first week. So if he could do that off 2 days, he does not need to be practicing. Now, a lot of people in the fantasy community and a lot of people just like on Twitter have this notion that like, oh, if a player's injured and their bye week is coming up, they're very likely to just rest and then get fully healthy afterwards. There are times and cases where that makes sense, but there are also a lot of instances where it actually works the other way around. The Bengals right now are competing in a division that's up for grabs. And more often than not, I think in this type of situation, Joe Flacco is going to say, hey, we have our bye week next week. Let me try to battle through this injury right now, and then I'll have 2 weeks to recover. Like, let me try to get out there and get a win for my team. The Bengals are 3-point underdogs, 51.5 point total, so a great game script. And I think if I had to make a guess, obviously this is going to fucking age poorly because it always does. I think Joe Flacco ends up battling through this injury. I think he gets an injection at the beginning of the game, and I actually think he plays through it despite all the negative press around whether or not he's going to play. So when you're the difference maker on your team, right, it's fine when like a running back has to recover from a high ankle sprain. It's like, oh, we got to bye next week. Let's get healthy after that. But Joe Flacco will likely be the difference between whether or not they win this game. If it's Jake Browning, I actually think another hot take, if it's Jake Browning, I'm not too scared off of a Jamar Chase and T. Higgins because Jake Browning just had an incredibly tough run out of matchups when he got put under center. And I think the Bears secondary, they're likely going to be without Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, and they were also without Tyreek Stevenson. So their top 3 cornerbacks, the top 2 will definitely be out again this week because they're on IR. But Tyreek Stevenson, not a game changer by any means. They're without those guys. Like I think Jake Browning can have success throwing the ball regardless of what we saw early on in the year. So the way I'm going to look at this is Jamar Chase must start regardless. Rome Odunze, great matchup against Cincinnati, must start regardless. Now, Rome was a DNP on Wednesday, but Wednesday reports for the most part are pretty fake for veterans who haven't really dealt with injuries. There was a DNP for DJ Moore. There was a DNP for Luther Burden. Now, Luther Burden is also in the concussion protocol. So there's a chance he doesn't clear. Olamide Zaccheaus is also a DNP with a knee injury. So there are a lot of receivers right now in the Chicago Bears room that we got to keep an eye on. But they do this a lot where like DeAndre Swift has been a DNP on Wednesday for like the last 3 weeks in a row. They'll rest these guys. And then Thursday and Friday, we'll get much more accurate reports on whether or not those guys are going to suit up. Regardless, it doesn't change a whole lot for the Bears receivers. Like you play Rome, he usually has good games. DJ Moore has been an extremely shaky flex play, but you do have to give him a little bit of slack here, given the fact that one, Olamide Zaccheaus and Luther Burden could be out for this game. Plus the matchup against the Bengals is phenomenal. The tough part here is T. Higgins. I still think like T. Higgins, he's not getting the targets that Jamar Chase gets, obviously, but I love the matchup, and I'm going to throw him right back into the dub flex here. Super startable this week, regardless of who's under center. Moving on to Denver at Houston. We've got the Houston Texans as 1.5 point favorites at home, a 39.5 point total. It is disgusting here. Now, we had Nico and Christian Kirk both return to practice on Wednesday. So I'm not overly confident that Christian Kirk plays. Sometimes extended absences, multi-weeks, and they return to practice. It's not a sure thing they play. Nico is very much expected to clear concussion protocol and play. And the big news here for the Denver side of things is that they will be without Patrick Surtain in this game. CJ Stroud is playing the best ball of the season so far. Obviously, some good matchups, so that's going to be a little bit inflated. But of course, if you got Nico, you are playing him. Courtland Sutton, this is where it gets a little bit tricky for a dude like Sutton, who's been so good for most of the year, but this matchup is so tough. Like you see the red across the board here. 29th in fantasy points allowed to receivers, dead last in both EPA per pass allowed by the Texans pass defense, and dead last in just overall points per game allowed to opponents. What worries me a little bit about this matchup in particular is that last week, the defense sold out to stop Courtland Sutton, and it worked for the most part up until the fourth quarter. I think the Texans can kind of just look at that tape. If they decide going into this game, like, hey, our main focus is to stop Courtland Sutton, I think that's not going to be that difficult of a task, especially when you have Derek Stingley, especially when you just have a defense that's this stifling against the pass. So listen, I think if you have Sutton, you're very likely starting him because we got 4 teams on bye, but I'm going to throw him closer to the dub flex category. Definitely earns his respect and needs to be at the top of it, but there's definitely some hesitation to be had here. Troy Franklin's line at 45.5. I am taking the under on that in real time. That might be my favorite play of the week right now. This matchup, this defense, Troy Franklin at 45.5 is simply too high not to snag. And listen, I went back. I looked at every bet that I've made on the spot throughout these videos so far, and I'm 4-1 on the season. So we are riding hot right now. So we're taking Troy Franklin under 45.5 receiving yards. He will go into the shaky flex category because you could definitely do worse than him this week, but let's not be fooled by what he did last week. He has a good game once every 6 weeks or so, and this is just not the matchup I'm expecting it to happen in. 39.5 point total. If you want to see all the picks that I make throughout the week, obviously I do a lot more research before I just randomly nail picks, but sometimes I'm doing these videos and something just speaks to me. It sticks out to me, right? But you can follow me on the Pickett app, free to download, free to follow me. Just make sure to support us that you use code BDGE when you do download it. It lets them know where you guys came from. And once you're on there, you could sync your books. So depending on what books, if you download the MGM app, obviously, and you use our code to get on there, you'll get our membership. But if you use MGM, if you use whoever, DK, FanDuel, you could sync all your books on there. So all your bets are in one central location, and you could track how you're doing across multiple weeks, across the calendar year, calendar months, or whatever. And it's like a social betting app. So you can follow me on there, and you can literally just copy some of the bets that I take. So you see like, oh, the Troy Franklin bet, like, let me just click copy, and you could automatically place it straight from the Pickett app. So free to download, free to join. The link down below will take you right to the app and allow you to download it while following me straight on the app, right? So code BDGE will get you to my profile or Guts profile, and you can find me from there. But yeah, if you want to see all of my picks for this week, Pickett app, please. Now, behind Franklin, behind Cortland Sutton, behind Nico Collins, it gets a little bit trickier. Like Mims, Pat Bryant, they're not of interest to me on that front. Nico Collins returns. If Christian Kirk returns, I mean, this does just not having Patrick Surtain just opens up the passing defense in a totally different way. Now, they have a great defense overall. Obviously, they get to the quarterback at an extremely high rate, and it's not like their cornerbacks behind Patrick Surtain are bad. Riley Moss, you have Jahdae Barron, who was their first-round pick this year. They still have a very, very good defense, even with the depoy of last year missing time. It just makes the receiver room extremely tricky to figure out. On top of that, Braxton Berrios was also a limited participant here at practice. So here's how I'm going to be looking at this room. Assuming all of the receivers are playing and back at full strength, I just don't know how you could look at either of the rookies because they're not going to start Noel over Kirk if Kirk is healthy. Maybe they split snaps. Outside of Nico Collins, Hutchinson, Jaden Higgins are going to split snaps on the outside. I really just don't feel confident in any of these players. Like, I think all of them, unfortunately, would probably fit in between the shaky flex and rather not tier, assuming Christian Kirk is playing. If Christian Kirk is not playing, let's go down that route. If Christian Kirk doesn't play, I can talk myself into Jalen Noel having another nice game from the slot here for sure. The outside receivers get so tricky. Like, I think both of them have looked good enough that you can throw them into the bottom of the shaky flex tier, but you are really playing with fire if you throw one of those guys into the lineup with Nico Collins starting. So let's keep moving down. We got Indianapolis at Pittsburgh. This is a 50.5 point total here. The Steelers are 3-point underdogs. The Indianapolis secondary has been very soft this year, as you could see. The third most fantasy points allowed to the wide receiver position. Let's check out the practice reports. Jalen Jones with a full practice. Deshaun Elliott is a big hit to the Steelers secondary. He is going to be out for a while. Kenny Moore at the DMP, but again, Wednesday, Josh Downs with a hip DMP. We'll just have to kind of keep an eye on those reports. DK Metcalf, I'm going to throw him into the feels good category. Good line here by Vegas. Good matchup overall. Michael Pittman, yeah, I mean, he feels great. He's damn near a must start for me at this point. He is like the wide receiver, I think 6 or 7 on the year in full PPR. He's just been so consistently getting home. He's scoring touchdowns. He's getting volume. He's just been the number one receiver for Daniel Jones, who's performing at an insanely high level up to this point. Behind those guys for the Colts, I think you can throw Alec Pierce, who's been playing pretty well, into the shaky flex tier, as well as Josh Downs, but they're definitely at the bottom of the tier. As you can see, their lines are 41.5, 36.5 for receivers. Calvin Austin, definitely don't want him into my lineup. Same with Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson had a good week last week, but Calvin Austin is still playing far and above away more than Roman Wilson is right now. Calvin Austin's like an 85% snap guy, where Roman Wilson's actually still at like 35, 40%. So don't let the box score fool you. Moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers at the Tennessee Titans. This is a 8.5 point spread here for the Chargers on the road in Tennessee, 43.5 point total. Ladd McConkey gets the matchup. He has been red hot here. So I think he is like my wide receiver 13 on the week, I want to say, my ranking. So he's going to land right at the board of the must start and the feels good tier. Keenan Allen's going to be a really strong dub flex here for me. Quentin Johnston's line is absolutely cratered with Gadsden breaking out 35.5 yards. They've got him below. Wow, that is really low. I might take the over on that. I could see this game getting away from them. I could see this being a really heavy Kamani Vidal dosage game, and then you're kind of picking and choosing who you think is going to get home. They really just have Johnston running just clear out routes. Like, he's just running deep routes, and they just haven't had to throw it deep. So he's going into the shaky flex tier. And on the other side of the ball, I do expect Calvin Ridley to miss another week. I believe he was a DNP again on Wednesday with the hamstring injury. Yes, he was. And that'll leave like the receiver core for Tennessee just still completely up in the air. Shamir DK has played a lot better than the other receivers in Tennessee, but like, there's no way I'm throwing him into the dub flex tier. He'll go into the shaky flex tier. I think you could start him if you need to. Alec Aymaner has really cooled off since the beginning of the season. That being said, you know, it could just be a trade-off of who gets home on a weekly basis. So I'd rather not play him. So I'm going to throw him down there, and that's really all the conversation to be had here. Minnesota at Detroit. Minnesota's going to have J.J. McCarthy starting at quarterback. You got Detroit coming off the bye. Amon-Ra St. Breezy gets right into that tier. This is a 48.5 point total. You got the Vikings as 8.5 point dogs. Jefferson's line is really high, 74.5 with 5.5 receptions to his name here, despite J.J. McCarthy getting the start. Really good matchup, though, because Detroit's secondary is so banged up. Maybe they get a little healthier coming out of the bye. They do get Terrion Arnold back. Christian Darrisaw was a full practice as well. Andrew Van Ginkel on that side. Taylor Decker, good news. He gets back to a limited practice. Kirby Joseph still with a DNP coming off of the bye is not great news, and they are without DJ Reed still on the IR. So the Detroit secondary is still very, very banged up here. Jefferson's going to go into the must-start tier. Jameson Williams, I mean, you guys, anyone who's drafted Jameson Williams knows he's not a dub flex. He, of course, you know, coming off of the bye, I think there's a very good chance that they have a few plays dialed up for him, and they're like, we want to get JMO going in week 9 and get him going for the rest of the season, but to just bank on that is crazy. He's definitely going to be closer to the top of the shaky flex tier for me because he's viable to pop any given week, but we're going to give him that treatment there. Jordan Addison, I think he's earned the shot to be in the dub flex tier. So despite him having lower Vegas odds than Romeo Doubs and Jameson Williams, I still think he is such a big part of this passing offense. And yeah, I'm gonna rank him there. Last 1 o'clock game, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the New York Giants, 48.5 point total, 2.5 points going towards the Giants here. We do not have news on the quarterback situation for the Niners, though it does sound like it's trending towards Brock Purdy, but it's hard to say that with certainty. The Niners are just so banged up on defense that they're kind of getting shredded left and right here. Wandell, I'm going to throw him into the dub flex tier. He's just had such a high floor, though I will say the splits when Darius Slayton is playing, Wandell can really, or I guess he just never really hits a ceiling when Darius Slayton is playing, though I still like Wandell Robinson. I'll throw Darius Slayton into the shaky flex category. He could see a lot of coverage from Diamador Lenore over there in San Francisco, who's played really, really well this year as a cornerback. But ultimately, I think Slayton is also viable to just kind of pop any given week. On the Niners side of things, as it relates to the receivers, it does not sound like Ricky Pearsall is going to play. He hasn't played since week 4, started off the practice week with the DNP again, so it's not trending in the right direction for him. There's something going on there. He must have had a re-injury to his knee. So that does leave the same receiver group in San Francisco. Listen, I don't want to get too cute here. I like Juwan Jennings this week. I've kind of been saying that for a few weeks now. And I will say, 2 weeks ago, target share of 27%. Last week, again, 21%. I think if Juwan Jennings just doesn't drop that deep ball from Mac Jones last week, we're a lot higher on Juwan Jennings going into this week. That's an uncharacteristic drop from him. So am I ready to put him into the dub flex tier? I don't know, but I tell you, he's right. He's like right between the Wandell Robinson, Romeo Doubs. I have a team in which I have to decide between Juwan Jennings and Romeo Doubs as a flex play in full PPR, and I will be starting Juwan Jennings probably over Romeo Doubs. So he's getting a high target share. He's leading the team in targets, and him and Purdy have a great chemistry and connection. We saw that all of last year. So I'm going to be higher on Juwan Jennings going into this week than I think a lot of other people are. And this is a really good matchup, as you can see a lot of green across the board here for the New York Giants. So you know what? Fuck it. We're going to throw him into the dub flex tier. Kendrick Bourne's going to go into the shaky flex tier. He's really come back down to earth after those first couple Mac Jones games. If Mac Jones ends up being the starter, then, I will move Juwan Jennings down to the shaky flex tier. But again, all of my rankings will be updated in real time throughout the week. Jacksonville at Las Vegas. Jacksonville coming off of the bye. They are on the road. Vegas is 2.5-point underdogs in this one, 44.5-point total. The biggest talking points here for this game, Brock Bowers will return. Jacoby Myers missed last game. It does sound like he is back in full at practice, so he will be playing unless he gets traded before the game on Sunday. Coming off the bye, we got Brian Thomas Jr. limited at practice. He hurt his shoulder in the last game before the bye, but probably had enough time to heal. He was in a no-contact jersey for the practice, so I don't think it's a guarantee that he plays this week or suits up this week, but it does seem like it's trending towards that happening. De'Ami Brown also back to a limited practice, so it does look like as long as these stay straight here, that they'll have most of their receivers back in this one. It's a great matchup versus the Raiders secondary. The big storyline is what's happening with Travis Hunter, of course. We had the massive explosion game for him right before the bye, most of it coming in garbage time, fourth quarter, but like everything that Liam Cohen is saying and the whole like post-rookie bye bump, you could just see the narratives already. Like talking about Travis Hunter going into draft season next year, everyone just continuing to cite, look at his numbers. After the bye last year, we knew Travis Hunter was the GOAT, and it makes sense. I do think the way that Brian Thomas Jr. is playing, him limited with the shoulder, I wouldn't be surprised if Travis Hunter plays really, really well in this game and then down the stretch. So he's going to go into the dub flex tier for me. I think consensus right now, he's like the wide receiver 25, which is probably a little bit juicy for me, but I probably don't have him that much lower. Yeah, I've got him at wide receiver 28 going into this week. I do have Brian Thomas as a top 20 guy. Do I feel great about him? No, he's in the dub flex tier for me. Like if I have Brian Thomas and he is playing, he's going to be in my lineup. Of course, Jacoby Myers, I'm going back and forth between the dub flex and shaky flex. Like I think it's a relatively good matchup, and him back and full at practice coming off of their bye, I feel okay, but he's probably going to be at the shaky flex tier and probably towards the top. Trey Tucker, I think, probably deserves to be in the shaky flex tier as well. New Orleans at the Los Angeles Rams. We will have Puka back post-bye, so he's a must-start. Devontae Adams is going to go into the must-start category as well. Chris Olave will get Tyler Shuck starting at quarterback, but we did see Tyler Shuck get 30 pass attempts in the second half last week. I think they're going to let him sling it, assuming they get down pretty quickly like they did with Spencer Rattler. And I just it's not like Rattler was overly accurate or overly awesome, and Olave continued to just get home. So I don't think it's like a major downgrade to Olave. I do think it's probably a slight downgrade to Olave for the fact that we don't know who's going to develop as like the 1-2-3 punch here. Is it Olave and then Shaheed and then Juwan Johnson? Like that's kind of been how Rattler has gone about this year? Or do things become a little bit more even between Olave and Shaheed? Or does Kamara start to get a little bit more of action in the passing game because he hasn't really got that this year? So I think that's really the downside. It's not necessarily, I think it's a major downgrade at quarterback. Like you trying to predict the percentage of inaccurate throws from Tyler Shuck as compared to Spencer Rattler from like 10 to 15 yards down the field, I don't think is really the way to go here. I just think there's a little bit of unknown mystery of, okay, who does Tyler Shuck kind of latch onto? And this is an incredibly difficult matchup against the Rams defense where I could see the defensive line just living in the backfield and just throwing Tyler Shuck under pressure every single snap. So Olave, when I look at him, when I look at Tyler Shuck, when I look at the matchup, I don't think he goes directly into the feels good category. He'll probably get a lot of volume. I could see like a 6 for 60 week. I'll throw him into the dub flex category, definitely towards the top of it. Shaheed's going to go into the shaky flex category for me, and I think we will move on after that. Also worth noting, Tutu Atwell is on the IR with a hamstring injury, so that condenses the targets even more in the Rams offense. Moving on to Kansas City at Buffalo. What kind of practice reports we got here? We got a DNP for Hollywood. Illness, though, he should be fine. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be out for this game. They got Ed Oliver out on the defensive line for the Bills. He's on the IR. Daquan Jones, DNP on the interior. So, I mean, without Pacheco, you'd think that they lean more into the pass, but if they are without the majority of their interior for the Bills, you could also see this as a point where they attack the weakness of the Bills defense, which is what that is. They'll have Maxwell Harrison out there, I believe, their first round pick at cornerback, the Bills will. So they should be getting better in the secondary. And as you could see, it is a lot of orange and red. So they haven't been a team that you can just throw through the air with a ton of success. That being said, Mahomes is playing some of the best ball of his career right now. Of course, Rashi's a must start. The Bills going against the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs secondary has been awesome this year, of course. This is a 52.5-point total, though. They are expecting fireworks, of course. It's the Chiefs and the Bills. The Bills are 1.5-point underdogs despite being at home. Shakir coming off a really good game, but I think we kind of know what Shakir is. He's a high floor guy. I don't expect them to break big plays against the Chiefs. Like, they're not really a defense where Shakir takes a 10-yard slant to the house. It just doesn't really happen that often. They're a much more disciplined defense. So Shakir could have a 6 for 60 game, could have a 4 for 40 game. I think he's probably closer to a shaky flex, definitely towards the top of it than he is a dub flex. But yeah, Xavier Worthy, despite his numbers coming down since Rashee Rice has returned, I still think I want a dude who's this explosive in a 52.5-point total game. I think they'll take some shots at Xavier Worthy. I still think they want to get him involved. He's going to be in the dub flex category for me. I would be playing Xavier Worthy over all of these dudes here down the shaky flex tier. The rest of the guys in this offense are just rather not. Keon Coleman's just such a disappointment. So is everybody else there. Like a father figure here. I'm so disappointed. Seattle at Washington. This is a 47.5-point total, -3 for the Seattle Seahawks. JSN, of course, is a must start. Terry McLaurin's going to be out for this game. He injured his quad in the last game, so he's going to miss some time, which I do think puts Deebo Samuel back into the... He performed really, really poorly the last couple of weeks. I do wonder if that heel is just really bothering him. It does also sound like Jaden Daniels, who returned to a full practice on Wednesday, will be out there for Sunday Night Football. For the Seattle secondary, they've been missing a ton of pieces this year, which they will get some help with Devon Witherspoon coming back to a full practice after the bye, which is a major upgrade to their secondary. Julian Love is still DNP with a hamstring injury, so safety will be down a little bit, but their cornerbacks should be much better, and they won't just be an absolute Swiss cheese pass defense like they've been for the last month or so because of the downgraded secondary because of injuries. So Deebo's here at 48.5 receiving yards, 5.5 receptions. Ultimately, I still think I like him more than a lot of these guys down here. You know, like BTJ, Diggs with the matchup, Olave with Shuck in the matchup, Sutton with the matchup, T. Higgins possibly without Joe Flacco. Keenan Allen might not be great game script for them. Like, I don't know. I still think I like Deebo with Seattle traveling across country and no Terry McLaurin. It's tough, obviously, because we don't know if he's really dealing with like a serious injury there, and that's why he's not played well. But I do, again, I think without Terry, you just kind of have to fire him up again, and it'll be like a top 20 receiver for me in my rankings. Behind all those guys, I don't think I want any of these players in my lineup. Like, maybe you can make the case for Cooper Kupp being at the bottom of the shaky flex tier, but yeah, there's no one else I really want here. Last game on the slate, we got fireworks out in Dallas. 54.5-point total here. Arizona at Dallas. Dallas is 2.5-point favorites. We do not have any practice reports yet for this game because it is Monday, unfortunately. So we don't know the quarterback situation for the Cardinals, which matters because I would rather have Jacoby Brissett out there for the pass catchers if I'm a Trey McBride or a Marvin Harrison Jr. owner. They play the Dallas Cowboys, who, as you could see, are literally the easiest pass defense to have success against for fantasy receivers. So despite that, from what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing is I would go 51-49 in favor of Kyler Murray getting the start in this one, which... Again, not like a huge difference for Marv. I just think the passing offense gets so much more consistency when a different quarterback is under center that doesn't like panic in the red zone. CeeDee's going to go must start. George Pickens is going to go must start. Marvin Harrison, listen, I feel good. The matchup's just fucking incredible. So I don't know how you can not have him in your lineup despite the inconsistencies of this season. 54.5-point total. Like, yeah, that's really all that needs to be said. And that's all 14 matchups for you, all right? We got 4 teams on bye, so we got through every wide receiver. God damn. Let's go into poster mode for you hoes. And as I said, all the rankings are live on the website right now. You can get it straight through BDGE.co, but the much cheaper way and the better way to support the brand if you are in an eligible state for MGM is by going to their app or website using code BDGE when you deposit $10 or more for the very first time. Play any slip. Make sure you got Troy Franklin under 45.5 receiving yards in it. You can see what I take throughout the weekend on the Pickett app, of course, but MGM, Pickett, code BDGE everywhere you go. And I will see y'all on Sunday for the private live stream if you are a Big Dog member, all right? Any sit-start questions you have for your lineup, I will answer to the worst of my ability. I'm out of here. I love y'all. Smoochies.